Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be using some collage tissues to practice shading faces in my art journal. So this is a collage tissue from Scrap Effects. I think it's called Contour Girls, and it's just a contour line drawing, but I've chosen to glue it in, one because I actually really like it, and two because I wanted to practice drawing and shading faces. Now I could spend time trying to do a contour drawing or drawing a face, but that's not what I wanted to practice on this page. I wanted to practice my shading. So the fact that I had a model here that I could sort of practice on, I found really, really handy. As I've explained on this channel before, when I shade faces, I have found I have much more success when I use rainbow colours, which seems really, really odd. But the reason for that is it's really visual for me, and I am a visual learner, that I can see very clearly that the yellow, which is my lightest colour, so I use that as a highlight. Then I've got the pinkish colour as my mid-tone, and then I've got the blues as my darkest tones. And very, very quickly I can sort of see what needs to be light, what needs to be dark. I can blend them together until I'm happy. And even though it looks rainbowy, to me it kind of makes sense. And I get much more contrast and I've got much more control than when I try to mix skin tones. So skin tones are eventually where I'm heading with all this. I will get to there at some point, but at the moment I'm still working on the actual shading of faces. So you can see me blending the colors together. I've only put out a very little amount of paint, and again, sort of using more layers of paint over the top of each other. So I'm not putting on very heavy coats of paint, I'm putting on light coats and building them up. And I find that's really handy too, because I can sort of see the layers of what I've got below and see what I need to add to it to sort of fill it in together. To have a bit of a contrast and to, you know, match the background, I've chosen to use sort of this limey green colour as her hair. So the background of this page was just me messing around. I had a foam stamp of those letters in the background. I put some paints over the top. I think they're Magicals. I was seeing how they worked on the craft paper. It was a bit of a trial and error page, but that's fine because that's what sort of pages like this are for. And because it was a bit of a trial and error page, I thought I'd do a bit of trial and error with my painting over the top. So now I'm going in and adding a little bit of detail with the eyes, with the cheeks and the lips. And you can see when you start to draw in the eye how it changes the page. You've suddenly now got this focus on the page once you've got the eye drawn back in again. So just drying it off, and now I'm going to put in the detail lines with the black. And I'm actually drawing back over all those contour lines. So again, this is where having a model like this is really, really handy. And because I've done the layers of the acrylic paint in the background, it's still quite transparent. So even though it looks quite opaque on the page, on the camera, I can actually still see those lines quite clearly. Underneath it, I can trace over them to get those lines back on my page again, which I really, really like. Just add something different to the entire page. When I was finished, I wanted to put a little bit of extra texture in, a little bit of extra shading in, so I decided to use my Stabilo Woody pencils, which are quite thick and chunky. They are basically the children version, even though I use them, of a Stabilo oil pencil, which those of you who follow my channel for a while know I love and use quite regularly. So they've got the same sort of texture, the same sort of pigment, and they just go on beautifully. So they are obviously water soluble as well. I don't tend to use them like that. I just like the really chunky lines that I get as you draw over the top of something. So I find that, you know, in the close-up you'll sort of see that texture as it goes through. So because I had paint left over, and I hate having, you know, paint left over, I decided instead of using a paint pen, I would actually use my leftover paint to paint my quote. So being a bit brave here, in reality it's no different from using a paint pen. So if I made a big mistake, I could still wipe it off with my wet wipe as long as it was still wet. And I'm doing exactly the same as I would usually do. So I'm writing it out first, then I go back over and darken it up, and I widen it up if I need to. I am using a really fine paintbrush to do this, to give me a little bit more control. So it's also taking me a lot longer than it usually would when I'm doing these things, because, you know, paint pens don't scare me, but a paintbrush doing lettering does, which is a bit bizarre, but, you know, that's the way it goes. And once I've painted out that, then I'm going in with my white pen and doing my drop shadow like I usually do. You can see I gave up on using my paintbrush to do the rest of it, just get straight back into the paint pens. The white sort of balances out the letters and again pushes it out from the background. Because I did have those magicals in the background, my white didn't actually stay true white, just in the fact that magicals are a water reactive pigment, so it did stain my white in some places. So just be aware, depending on what materials you use in the background, it can make a difference to what you put over the top as well. If you wanted on this page my white to stay truly white, I would have painted it over the green letters, because that would that's sealed. It was dry paint, so it would have been sealed already. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. You can see me using up the rest of the paint to make a background in my page. I think that will be up on my channel shortly, or it's already been up, so you can see how I finished that page off as well. So when I've finished here, I've got Live Your Life, but it didn't seem finished to me. So I've gone back in and I've done a little bit of journaling about what living your life means. And I really like this image for that, because it actually had that space where the eye should have been to journal in. One of the things about the paint pens which are really handy is the Stabilo Woodies, which I sketched on the background with, are quite waxy, but the paint pens will actually go over the top of it. So again, depending on what you use, if I tried to use a gel pen over that, it probably wouldn't have gone over the pencil in the background. So just be aware of what you're using and how it's going to work. Because I had my rainbow girl and painted her in rainbow, I decided that I would actually do the lettering in rainbow colours. So I pulled out my rainbow paint pens. Again, convenience. I'm very lucky. I was a very generous Santa to myself one year and bought a full set of Posca pens for my Christmas present, which I really appreciated that I bought myself that because I use them every day. But it does give me the ability that I can just go in and do this. So what I suggest is, if you've got the opportunity to choose your favorite colors that you use a lot, it is really handy to be able to choose the colors you want. So because I use rainbow a lot, I made sure that I definitely had a rainbow set of pens that I could play with. I decided in the end I didn't want to just leave the in white, so it blended in a little bit more, so I actually went over it with the paint pen. It's not quite the same color, but it sort of blends in enough that it doesn't stand out too much. So that's my finished page. I've got my rainbow girl practicing my shading, I've got my lettering, I've used a up page, and I had fun doing this. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a go at doing that yourself. Remember, you don't have to draw everything in your journals. You can use tissue papers, you can use stamps, you can paint over the top of a magazine. They're all there to help you develop your skills. Until next time, bye for now.